it's Presley at ActOutGames.com here, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about how we do homeschool math, as well as review this new game we got called Equate. It's basically Scrabble with math. So first, we're going to review this new game we're playing, and then we'll sit down at the table and talk about how we do homeschool math. The aim of the game is to get as many points as you can, and you get points by getting 9 of these little math tile things, which have operators and numbers on them. And you try and make equations across the board, and you try and make them as big as possible, and get as many points as possible. And of course, like any other point game, the person with the most points wins. It works a lot like Scrabble, where there are double tiles, and you can get double or triple points from your entire equation. So it works a lot like Scrabble, if you've ever played that. It's a lot easier to see in action than to describe it, so let's play a game. So we also have these equal sign tiles, which are free, and everyone can use them. So you don't have to have one in your hand to make an equation. These are free. You just have to have the numbers and the operators. The equations have to go left to right or top to bottom. You can't do them backwards or upside down.
Or diagonal.
Or diagonal. So for my first move, I'm going to do what I think is kind of a bit cheaty, but it's a true equation. So I'm going to do it. So let's do it.
To explain how that works.
So this is a true equation because 6 divided by 6 equals 1, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. So I don't actually have like the physical 4 divided by 4, but it's a fraction, so it works.
So just like Scrabble, I have to play off of what she put on the board. And so
They have to be connected.
I only have 2 operators. I have to use one of the 2 operators that I pulled. And since this one's worth the most points, I'm going to play it. And I'll play it on a double tile square.
So there's one thing we forgot to explain. Nice.
Yep. And so I get double points for that guy. So that's 10. And I get triple points for him, so that's 3.
Wow.
So that's 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 points if we were keeping score.
Nice.
Okay, what did we forget to explain?
You can use tiles on the board like they were your tiles. So if it's on the board, you can treat them as if it was on your deck. You just can't move it around. So I kind of forgot how to explain that. So like it's not cheating that he just used my 6 in my equation there.
Yeah, just like Scrabble. And I get the points for that 6 too.
Yes.
Even though I didn't put it on there, I get those points. But if it was on like a double point, I wouldn't get the double points. You only get the double points the first time. Right?
You only get the double points the first time the thing.
Okay, now I need to take my pieces.
Oops. And there's my true equation.
Very nice. That's a good one. Okay. So another way that you can play that is a really cool way when you get the pieces that let you do it is you can expand an equation. You take an existing equation and just make it longer instead of just going across it.
And so you can still get the points for all
Yeah, you get all the points. So if you take the 6 divided by 2 equals 3, then I can change that by multiply this side by 10, and I get 60 divided by 2 equals 30. And so now I get all of the points for all of those tiles that I played.
That we're not using points.
You can keep that going. So if you could add 5 to each side of an equation or what, as long as you keep the equation balanced, you can keep that equation growing. So if we kept doing that, then we could take this equation all the way across the board, and then the last person that played would get all of the points for everything that went across the board, which would be a cool way to play. We haven't really gotten there yet.
We're not doing a point game.
Starting to expand on those equations, I think, is a really cool way to play too.
So the game ends when the draw pile runs out of tiles, and one person runs out of all their tiles. And the person who ran out of all their tiles gets to keep all of the points from the tiles in everyone else's hands. So, for example, I have these, and my dad just ran out of his tiles, and the draw pile's empty. He gets all these points. So he gets these 1s, these 2s, this 5. He gets all those points. So this is a really fun game, and we just got it today, but we've already played it several times. It's really fun, and it's a really great way to improve on your equations, as well as you're doing math to make sure you have a true equation. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we do homeschool math.
Like Presley said, we wanted to talk just a couple of minutes about how we do our homeschool math and some of the things that we focus on. I do a lot of the math with Presley, and so that sort of falls to me, so I thought we'd talk about it a little bit. A lot of people ask us about our homeschooling, and certainly with the Mommy and Gracie references over to us for homeschooling, and then talking to them about how we do some of our homeschooling, we thought we'd put some of this on a vlog. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So we just showed you this game, Equate, that we play. We just started playing. I found it online. It's super cool. It's really great. So this kind of gamification of learning is really awesome because, you know, Presley's drilling arithmetic while she's playing a game. She's having fun, and it doesn't feel like just getting a worksheet with 50 problems on it.
It's
like
not
you
like
playing a game, you probably solve 50 problems.
Yes.
But it's not the same as getting a piece of paper with 50 problems on it to sit down and solve, right?
So this brings me to the bad math techniques. So bad math techniques, there are 2 different types. There are the attempt at a game and just the boring math. So the attempt at a game is where you play a fun game, like there's this one called like Ninja Math something.
Yeah, Ninja Math, I think is what it was.
Ninja Math.
Yeah.
And what it was is, okay, now play a fun game where you shoot monsters with a friggin' shuriken. Shuriken. Now you do math. Now play the game, now do math. Now play the game, now do math. So, yeah, that's the attempt at a game. And the boring math is where you are placed at a table and you have 15, you just have 50 math problems. Yeah. It doesn't have any story behind it.
That's right.
It's not
so
fun game.
There's a big difference between like the game, like the Ninja Math you're talking about is it's a game that the math isn't integrated into the game at all. You play the game for a few minutes and then it just stops and gives you like 10 math problems, and you have to do those math problems correctly before you can go back and play the game again. It's not an integral part of the game, which doesn't really work. That's not gamification. Like the Equate game we just showed you, like the math is an integral part of playing the game. You have to do math to play the game correctly, and it feels like a game, and that's the way sort of gamification should work. And the Dragon Box review you did the other day is just a brilliant example of that, I think, about how that works, and we'll tag the Dragon Box review at the end of this video so people can check it out.
Dragon Box is very amazing.
It's very amazing for math, for algebra specifically. It teaches algebra. And it teaches algebra without numbers, which I think is awesome because algebra is about concepts.
To numbers.
Yeah, you get into numbers, but it starts to teach you the concepts without numbers, and the concepts are what's important in algebra. And so I think one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was why math, like why math is so important. And you and I have talked about this.
In your life.
You're probably gonna need to do some basic math, but you don't necessarily. Most people
don't need algebra.
Yeah, if you're not working in something that has to do with mathematics, like some of the statistics and stuff I do.
If I was working as a park ranger, I wouldn't be using algebra very often.
You wouldn't be using particularly complex mathematics, right? But
I would just be like, how many wolves are there? Well, some died today, so there's this many wolves.
Why have we talked about math is important? You remember what I told you that math teaches you how to do? Conceptually, not like doing math, but what does it teach you how to do conceptually? With a big problem, big complicated problem.
Take steps in it, take smaller steps in it. Like in algebra, you look at this really big, complicated algebra problem, like 5x plus 25 equals 200, and then you're like, okay, so then I do that, and then you just like take slower steps, and then you eventually get x equals blah blah.
Yeah. So what math teaches you is to take a big problem and break it down into smaller problems. And you can solve the small problems, and those small solutions add up to the solution of the big problem. And so in life, you will do that all the time. Like, you may not use math, but you'll use the logic and the problem solving steps of math constantly. Right? And that's why it's important to learn higher mathematics. Right? Even if you're not going to use math later in life. It's like learning formal symbolic logic, right? You don't know what that means, but it's a lot like learning to do that. You learn to problem solve and to break things down in little bite-sized chunks.
It's like learning how to ride your bike. I mean, there's not many jobs where you ride bikes, but learning how to ride a bike is cool. You can ride bikes. It's like learning how to drive. You don't specifically have to drive to live. Right. You just drive to do. Like what
it teaches you how to think.
Yes.
Right. And that's really what it does. And you think a lot no matter what you do. You'll have to learn how to think and how to break problems down and solve them. So I think it's a really appropriate thing for people to spend a lot of time on.
Yes.
And so keeping it interesting is really important, just like everything else that we do with homeschooling. Keeping it interesting through games is one way to do it. Another way that I've done. It depends on how much you want to get into the theory of education and like psychometrics and institutional design or instructional design. Psychometric. It's a cool word though, right?
Yes, it sounds like
it's how to test people. It's how to assess how people are learning, right?
It sounds like psychotic people doing geometry.
Yeah, psychos.
Psychotic people doing
psychometric, right? It's one of my favorite words. I get to use it at work all the time, and so I love it. I work with psychometricians. It's even better, right? So if you look at scaffolding around mathematics, which is sort of how you stack one thing on top of another, you learn this, and that lets you learn this, and lets you learn this. If you combine that with desirable difficulties, which is a really cool thing to look up if you're interested in studying about how to challenge your child, like Presley constantly needs to be challenged. And so desirable difficulties...
It's not like, what is 2 plus 2? That's not the math
you don't want it to be too easy, that's right. And you also... You want to push to where, like, a lot of the new research is showing how important forgetting is. So even like learning something and then forgetting it and relearning it and forgetting it and relearning it a couple of cycles is really helping build those pathways in your brain. So having something that's so difficult that you can learn it sitting at the table, but then it's hard for you to remember and keep it in your brain, so you kind of forget it, and then we come back and you do it again and you come back. Like, that's actually beneficial for learning. So desirable difficulties, the advantages of forgetting and scaffolding are all important concepts.
Doing it super duper duper hard.
But not so hard you can't even understand it. Like, that's too hard, right? That's not a desirable difficulty. Yes. Desirable difficulty is just outside of your reach, where you have to stretch to be able to do it. You take the stuff that you know, like on the scaffolding, you build up the scaffold. And I always want to be teaching you the stuff that's on the next step of the scaffold, so that you're learning it. And math is great. It's the easiest way to do this, is because math really builds on top of itself in a pretty linear fashion, right? You have to learn how to add and subtract and multiply and divide before you can move on to solving equations, because equations use those things, right? Like doing algebra. And so, but what I don't do is have you do a lot of drilling of arithmetic, like just giving you a bunch of multiplication problems or addition or subtraction, right? We did that until you got it and you understood how to do it. And even when you were struggling with it a little bit, you understood the concept of doing it. And immediately we started putting those things into equations, into algebra. So now Presley's drilling of arithmetic comes from doing algebra, because when you solve an algebra problem, all you're really doing is arithmetic. Yeah, algebra just tells you the order in which to do the arithmetic, basically. And so you're using these formulas in algebra, but the problem solving is all arithmetic. So she's drilling her arithmetic over and over again, just like she would doing worksheets, but she's doing it in the context of solving for x, or solving for x, y, and z, like we just did. If you have 3 different equations with 3 different variables, you can solve for the variables. We just did that just the other day. And so
I think we actually did that today.
We did some of that. Oh, we did do some of that today. But we did the cat and the rabbit and the dog thing a couple of days ago.
And then we did today we did 2 or 3 more.
Oh yeah, we did that. That was two equations with 2 equations with 2 variables. So yeah, so really the point is that once she has the basics of arithmetic down, we moved on to algebra and started doing algebra and solving for x. And we've been doing that for a long time. She's really comfortable with that and familiar with that. And then once she had the basics of algebra down, so algebra is taking an equation and learning how to do the arithmetic to solve the equation.
Solve for x.
And then when you move into something like calculus, calculus is really all about determining what equation to solve. So when you study calculus, only like 10% of it is calculus. because the calculus tells you what equation to build, and then you do algebra to try and determine what order to do it, and then you do arithmetic to solve the problem, right? So it all sort of cascades.
So it goes from, oh my god, I'm doing calculus too. I'm doing calculus too.
It does. Like you feel like when you first start studying calculus, you're like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to learn calculus and it's going to be awesome. And then you start doing it and you're like, I'm still doing algebra. Oh, why is this all just algebra? And then it's just addition and multiplication.
And then you start learning, like you learn your arithmetic, and then you start learning algebra, and you're like, wow, this is going to be so cool, I'm going to learn algebra.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute, this is just arithmetic. It's just order of operation is all you really learn, right?
You just learn PEMDAS.
Yeah.
PEMDAS is...
Right, you learn PEMDAS and then you go on. So I did want to share this this book we're using right now, Easy Algebra. People love this or hate it. I actually love it. I think you kind of like it, right? We're having fun. I don't know, people hate it.
So people who apparently hate that probably use stuff like this little book called Hardcourt.
Oh, Hardcourt. A lot of people use Hardcourt for homeschool math.
It's terrible.
But
don't use it.
It's drilled. It's very drilled.
It's just like, okay, hi, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now do 100 plus 200.
So the difference with what easy algebra does is it teaches algebra through a narrative.
A story.
So it tells a story about like this medieval king and his accountant and the people that help him out, and they travel around the kingdom and they run into people with problems and they solve those people's problems using algebra.
Yes.
But the cool thing is that they don't know algebra at the beginning of the book, so they're inventing algebra. They're discovering it. They're talking about axioms and theorems and how you can take a couple of things you assume to be true and build upon that to prove all of these algebraic concepts. Yeah.
And there's some cool stuff in the book because there's this one guy in the book which is kind of your brain, your first learning algebra, which is like, how does that work? How are you using a letter for a number?
Right.
What? It's kind of freaking out a little bit about it. But and then it's like your brain, it kind of accepts what's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But then it teaches like transitive properties, and it teaches like why adding even numbers is even, and adding an odd number to an even number is odd, and multiplying evens or multiplying positive numbers is positive, and multiplying a positive and a negative is negative. Like it teaches why that's true, and you work through the proofs, but you do it in a very narrative kind of way. And so we really kind of love it. We read the book, we read the narrative about a concept, and then we practice the concept. And Presley does work to practice the concept, and then we bring it to a board game or we do something with it to practice it. So I think this, I'll put a link to this too in the description, but I think it's a really great way to start covering algebra and listening to some of the concepts.
So these are really, really good things, which don't even really feel too much like you're
these are our big things
algebra.
right now. Yeah, these are the big things we're doing.
This one feels more like you're learning algebra than this one.
Yeah.
But this one, it feels like you're playing Scrabble. Yeah. But you're not playing Scrabble. You're doing like 50 math problems.
That's right. The other one we've got, which I don't know where it is right now, but we use these books called the manga guides quite a bit because we do anime. It's okay. That's all right. We do. You can go grab one.
Okay. You talk about it. I'll go get them on.
All right. So we use these books called manga guides quite a bit, and they use anime style and manga style to teach pretty complex subjects. They dig into some pretty cool things. So we have a manga guide to calculus right now that we're using for some of our calculus work. And we have one for statistics, and we have one for biochemistry, I think, that we're using for some of the life sciences. And so they've got a full collection of things, and they move pretty fast. And so like one of you needs to have a pretty good grasp of what's going on in the books to be able to teach from it and to be able to
quote a lesson. Electricity.
Oh, electricity. Yeah, that's one of the other ones that we have. So the electrical circuits. We're actually tomorrow. You're going to learn how to solder because we're gonna be putting that microphone or the speaker in your empty child.
Soldering. I've already soldered before.
You have, but you did.
It's fun.
Yeah, so we'll be soldering tomorrow.
Get all of these solder things and be like.
We'll build you a little test bed. You can do all kinds of soldering you want to. So yeah, so electricity, like I said, statistics, calculus, biochem. There's lots of stuff we have in here. So we've been using these guys a lot, and they're a lot of fun. This is definitely not a textbook replacement. These are more add-ons. As you're learning the concepts, you can review them. And here, cellular biology is another one that we have that's really good. And so these move a little too fast to use this just to actually learn the concepts, but to drill it and learn more about it, they're really fantastic. Yeah.
So what we do is, my dad knows all this stuff. So what we do is we read the book, and then it's kind of like, what do you call it, backwards classroom?
A reverse classroom.
Reverse classroom. Yeah. So we read the book, and then I try and explain something in the book. And then my dad explains it to me if I do get it wrong. Right. So it's called backwards. Reverse classroom because I didn't teach how to do. I didn't get taught how exactly what the problems mean before doing them. Yeah. So I get teach what the problem means and how to solve them more at the end. That's right.
So reverse classroom is a little bit like you do a lot of the studying on your own, and then we sit down together and do the homework. Yes. So instead of me teaching you something, and they're using this in schools a lot now, right? So instead of the teacher giving you a lecture in the classroom, and then the students go home and do the homework by themselves, and the students struggle with the homework. Like a lot of times when you're doing your homework, you run into problems you don't understand, and there's nobody there to help you because you're at home, right? And so they're doing this thing called reverse classroom, where the students watch the lectures at night for homework. Their homework is learning about the material.
Like watching a video.
Right, and then they come to class and they do the homework in class while the teacher's there to help them when they run into trouble with homework, which is a really great model.
Which is kind of like how we do it.
Yeah, it's pretty much, at my school. Like I'll give you assignments, like here, before I go to work, I'll say, Presley, learn about this a little bit, and when I get home, we'll talk about it. And so you do a lot of independent study,
so
and
like
then we do the homework.
Like our pirate unit study we did a while ago. So, my dad was about to leave for work, and he said, learn about, go look up inertia and try and teach yourself about inertia. And then I actually didn't understand inertia too much but from looking at the Wikipedia page, because the Wikipedia page is a bit complicated. So then we went to the couch, and we discussed inertia, and I'm like, I don't really get this. So then my dad knows what inertia is, so I learned what inertia is.
So that's sort of flipped classroom. That's an implementation of flipped classroom, definitely. Cool. So like I said, I don't want to talk too long because we always talk way too long when we do these videos together.
Like if you see like some of our older Presley's perspectives, they're like 15 minutes.
The Presley's perspectives go pretty long.
30 minutes long.
So we'll put links to these resources down in the description. So the dooblydoo.
The dooblydoo.
Yeah, we'll put the links down in the dooblydoo for you to take a look at. They're really good. Think about the narrative algebra thing, if that's your style or not. If it's not your style, people really don't like it if it's not their style, but we love it. It kind of works with us because we do a lot of things narratively. And you know, if you're interested in digging into some of the other concepts, I'll try and put some links down there, or at least explain what, or you know, some of the keywords that you can look up and do some Googling around the scaffolding and desirable difficulty. You don't really need to worry about psychometrics. It's just kind of cool word to play with. The studies on forgetting that are going on right now that are pretty cool, the way that they're coming out. So we'll put a little bit of extra information about what we use as some of the science behind some of the homeschooling that we do, just so people can kind of follow that. So it's not just a sort of
school at home.
It's definitely not school at home, because the reason we're homeschooling is because I don't think the school model works very well. Just as one example, before I go off on a huge rant and tangent, is that if we're doing this algebra, we're playing this game and we're doing something and it's going really well and Presley's really engaged and she's enjoying it, there is no like 10 o'clock bell that goes off and you sort of arbitrarily have to stop doing algebra and start doing English. Like that model is just flawed. That if Presley's really engaged and excited and learning a lot and going into a subject, we just keep going. We don't stop. There's not like an arbitrary thing that says, okay, stop and go do this now. That's one tiny thing out of many that we could rant about the reasons we homeschool.
We might make a rant video.
Yeah, we can make a rant video if we want to. But yeah, so it's just personalization. We can move at Presley's own pace. If she's struggling with something, we spend longer on it. If she's got something, we move ahead faster. It's just very paced towards individual. It's the way that school should be. Yeah. And hopefully technology will continue to bring those to the table. And if that's what I'm trying to do with my day job. So yeah, we'll put a lot of links down there. We'll share a bunch of this stuff. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them. We're happy to do homeschool vlogs pretty regularly.
Answer questions.
We love talking about it. People ask us about it all the time, and we spend a lot of time on it.
Yes.
And so yeah, please ask any questions you have about homeschooling.
Yes.
If you want, we're happy to do a follow-up vlog to this and talk about the socialization issue, because that's what everybody asks about is socialization and friends.
I'll just put a small amount. I do have several friends. I really do have several friends. I have my group of friends, and we go And now we meet every Friday, but when we're out of option season, every Thursday we go out to a park and we meet up. There's no socialization issues there. Every single Thursday I socialize with people, and I socialize on Skype almost every day.
We go out every day. Presley meets new people. Like there's a whole philosophy around it and stuff. But I assure you, Presley is not hurting for social interactions.
I Skype almost every day.
Between all the cons that we go to, and she has a big group of friends that we hang out with. Yeah. She does hang out with her friends online. She has you guys, her fans that sort of communicate in the comments and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of socialization going on, and it's not, you know, that structured school socialization, or where you're not even kind of supposed to be socializing. You're just supposed to be heads down and working, and you get in trouble for talking. So going on play dates and hanging out and going to the museum with people and learning, and we co-op and work together as homeschoolers. So there's a lot of socialization going on. But if people are really interested in that subject, then we can definitely do a complete vlog about how socialization works when you're homeschooling. Cool. Right, I think we've done enough.
We've done a lot.
Let's don't run too much longer, okay? You want to sign us off?
So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!
Bye, guys.